to me, the British people have now voted against us 4 times in a row. What on earth is wrong with them? And, I feel like this with progressive politics. So when I have conversations here and elsewhere with people, I say, no, I don't want to talk about President Trump or what's happening in these other countries or why, so-and-so won in this country or not. What about us? The fact is we have, progressive politics is not in the right place globally at the moment. It's gone down a whole set of cul-de-sacs around things like, frankly, like identity politics and so on, which is never going to create a proper unifying political message. And we haven't worked out a modern economic way of looking at the world, which I think personally is all about the technology revolution and how you understand it and harness it. And so, where there are issues like immigration and we're not dealing with them, yep, you're going to get a populist reaction. And I always say about populists don't invent grievances. They may exploit them, but the grievances are usually real. And therefore you've got to deal with it, whether it's stagnant wages or issues to do with anxiety over cultural change. And so for the progressive side of politics, how did we win? Well, first of all, we were always there in what I would call the common sense position on things like culture. But secondly, we had a strong desire to make change that was radical but also sensible. And the problem always for progressive politics, in my view, is that the radicals aren't sensible and the sensible people aren't radical. And so what you end up with is a situation where you're either boring or extreme, right? And unbelievably, that doesn't win you an election. So in my view, the single biggest challenge of democracy today is efficacy. It's getting things done. I mean, anyone who's ever been in government knows the toughest thing is to get anything done. And I remember this came home to me when I was in Downing Street, and I won a big landslide victory. I was the most powerful person in the country. I thought, if I take a decision in Downing Street, something's going to happen. And after about a year, I realized nothing happened. The system just absorbed this pressure for change and somehow killed it off. And if you look at, for example, the rise of President Trump here, I think it's got a lot to do with people wanting things moving. They want action, they want things to go. So you've got to, if you're in serious politics, you've got to understand the appeal of the people on the opposite side of politics, and you've got to respond to it. And today, that's why, as I say, my view is the single most important thing that's got the transformative power to change government, to change healthcare, education, public services, is this technology revolution. How do you understand it, master it, harness it, and use it to change the world, right? Because it is going to be the biggest thing happening. But that's not even the debate my bit of politics is really having at the moment.
But let me press you on what that means in terms of immigration, which was an issue you mentioned. And I think if there's any single issue that most explains the rise of political extremism, both in Europe and in America, it may well be immigration. And I've got to say that I'm conflicted. I'm the son of a refugee. And when President Trump in his first term separated families, that moved me and I think the Democratic Party to the left. We didn't listen to the American public when they said, look, that's enough. European liberals didn't listen to their publics who said, look, that's enough. And yet, I'm not sure that I want to listen to people who periodically spew xenophobia. Angela Merkel, I think, did a great thing for the German economy by admitting Syrian refugees, but now the AfD is, in some polls, the most popular political party in Germany. So what do we do when our political interests conflict with deeply held values?
Well, I think we go, as I would say, to a position of where I think you can unify most people. Look, immigration has done an immense amount for your country, for my country. A lot of the people most prominent in the technology sphere are immigrants. So immigration, properly controlled, is a good thing, but you have to have controls. And I always say to people with immigration, if you don't have rules, you'll end up with prejudices. The important thing, therefore, is you've got to, whether people come into your country or not, has got to be a decision. And what you learn in government is a lot of immigration is driven by the signals you send, right? And I'm afraid you've got to send a signal that if you come into a country, you come in lawfully or you don't come in, right? And that is the thing that allows you to unite a belief that immigration properly controlled can be a good thing with the desire to make sure that immigration doesn't become a grievance amongst the population and then end up actually disrupting relationships between communities, and then you get a whole lot of things getting connected with levels of immigration and crime and lawlessness and so on. And this is happening literally all over Europe right now. And for if you like, conventional politics, here's the thing, conventional politics has got to be the place of solutions. It cannot be the place of managing the status quo. If you end up being just the managers of the status quo and the status quo is not working for people, they're going to put you out.
You mentioned the need for solutions. Let's talk about the Middle East. That's a place that you've